Greetings everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, and this time I want to go through the full list. Yes, the full list of all the feats you get. I feel like there's been a lot of people asking questions about the feats, a lot of confusion, and there's an opportunity to provide some clarity and some valuable information for people playing the game. Couple of quick notes, or rather one big note. This is probably going to be hard to watch if you're a veteran of the game, because I'm going to do this in a way that leans more towards people who are coming to Pathfinder for the first time, which means I am going to take the time to explain some of the terms that might be in the definition, such as DC or saving throws, as we go through the different feats. So if you're already a maestro and feel like this video has nothing to offer you, I completely understand. If you're here for a specific feat, I am going to go down this list in alphabetical order, but I'll be honest, there's just way too much information and way too many feats. I already know I'm not going to have the patience to go through this and put in the chapters. So you can kind of see the flow of the list and get an idea of where the specific feat you're looking for is located at. And then you can fast forward the video based upon that to whatever section it is you're trying to go to specifically. And with that, let's go ahead and just jump. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing, one other note. This community is very warm. It's very open. It's very welcoming. So if I do not answer the particular question that you have, or you're confused about an explanation I provide, post it in the chat. Post your question. Either myself or somebody else who's a part of the community will absolutely respond and give you the information that you need. If you see that I'm saying something you feel like it's wrong, or you feel like it could be explained better, I am always open to feedback. I always want my community to get the best information possible. Again, post it down below. Let people know that, hey, this is actually a better way to explain what he was trying to say. No problem whatsoever. I want this to be kind of a repository for everyone to be able to use to get some really valuable information about the feats in this game. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. First up, ability focus, bombs. Add +2 to the DC for all saving throws against your bombs. So DC stands for difficulty class. Whenever a creature attempts to perform an action whose success is not guaranteed, they must make some sort of check, usually a skill check. And then saving throws, when you are subject to an unusual or magical impact, you often get a chance to make a saving throw, also called a save, to avoid or reduce the effect. So in this situation, you get bombs that have all sorts of different effects. For example, you get explosive bombs that can set your enemies on fire. So the difficulty class tells you how difficult is it for enemies to resist that effect and say, no, I will not be set on fire just because you've thrown that bomb at me. And then they're going to have different ratings for saving throws that they will use against that particular effect. So for example, if you throw a fireball at a group of enemies, they're gonna have to use their reflex saving throw in order to essentially dodge that fireball and have a lessened, or in some cases, either a lessened impact, or in some cases, no impact at all. So you can take this if you want a particular ability of your bombs to be more effective. Point blank shot. You get a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with ranged weapons at ranges of up to 30 feet. I think attack and damage are pretty self-explanatory. Attack is how good you are at actually hitting your enemy, and then damage rolls, how much damage are you going to actually do if you're able to successfully hit your enemy. This is absolutely a requirement if you're an archer or someone who's using ranged weapons, such as bombs or throwing weapons. It is also a requirement if you are playing as a mage who uses spells that require a touch attack. because when you take point blank shot, you then get access to precise shot, which is going to take away the -4 penalty you usually take on ranged attack rolls against opponents who are engaged in melee. So if you're a spellcaster who's using Hellfire Ray, for example, you're going to be missing with it all the time because you're going to be taking a -4 anytime enemies are engaged in melee, which of course is all the time. And recognize it's not just ray spells, it's anything that's going to actually roll an attack in order to be able to hit. So if you're trying to become an angel and at your first mythic level, you take Closer to Heaven, you get a Holy Ray spell. That also is affected by this. And you're going to be missing with it a lot if you don't take precise shot. Clustered shots. You take a moment to carefully aim your shots, causing them all to strike nearly the same spot. When you use a full attack to make multiple ranged weapon attacks against the same opponent, total the damage from all hits before applying that opponent's damage reduction. So when you're taking a turn, in one round, you can do a move, swift, and standard action. If you decide to forego the move and just immediately attack, you can do a full attack, which will use your full base attack bonus. And oftentimes, that means you'll be able to strike an opponent more than once in that same turn. This is very, very powerful for archers. They can get 5, 6, 7 attacks all in just one round. Now, a lot of enemies, in fact, almost all the enemies you face will have damage reduction. So let's say you're an archer and you fire 5 times. Each of your arrows does 10 damage, right? And you're going up against an enemy that has damage reduction 5. Before you take this feat, every single arrow that you fire will have 5 damage taking off of it, all right? After you take this feat, the game instead will calculate the full 50 damage that you're supposed to do against this opponent, and then take 5 off of that due to the opponent's damage reduction. Very, very powerful stuff earlier in the game. Mind you, as you continue to get better equipment, when you got +2 bow, +3 bow, +4 enchantment bow, enhancement bow, this becomes less and less effective because those +1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buffs, they bypass some forms of damage reduction automatically. So you'll get to the point that you're automatically bypassing any or at least most damage reduction that an opponent has anyway, rendering this kind of moot. But early on in the game, when you're actually able to take it, it is very valuable. Improved precise shot. Your ranged attacks ignore anything but total concealment and cover. Your ranged attacks ignore the mischance granted to targets by anything less than total concealment. Total concealment provides their normal benefits against your ranged attacks. Now, there are a ton of enemies that use invisibility, concealment, things of that nature. So technically this is useful. But for me personally, I prefer not to take feats that are going to make me more effective at enemies and concealment. I prefer instead to use spells and abilities that will automatically make my enemies lose their concealment and lose their invisibility, thus rendering that defensive element kind of moot. Things like true seeing, see invisibility, dispel. These will all tear off those defenses, making it easier for your allies to be able to take down those opponents. But if you're not interested in doing that and just want your archer or whoever you're using to just naturally be able to deal with those types of enemies, this is a worthy feat to take. Snapshot. When wielding a ranged weapon, you threaten squares within your melee reach. You can make attacks of opportunity with that ranged weapon. You do not provoke attacks of opportunity when making a ranged attack as an attack of opportunity. Attacks of opportunity are special melee attacks. A character can perform them during an enemy's turn if that enemy provokes it while being in their threatened area, creating an opening for a hit. So usually you'll get attacks of opportunity because your melee ally comes into threat range of a melee enemy, and then that enemy still tries to run past them or go to a different target, giving your melee ally the opportunity to get a free hit upon that person before they're able to move on. This is absolutely fantastic and a very effective way to focusing on attacks of opportunity. It's a very effective way to approach the game because there are a lot of enemies who will try to run straight past your front line to your back line. Now, with Snapshot, it makes it easier for your archers to also do attacks of opportunity. So with Snapshot, you're going to threaten squares within your melee reach. With Improved Snapshot, you're going to improve that threat range by 5 feet. And then finally, with Greater Snapshot, you're going to get an additional 5 feet that you're able to do attacks of opportunity. And in addition, you're going to gain a bonus +2 on damage rolls and on rolls to confirm a critical hit with that attack. And these bonuses are going to increase over time as your base attack bonuses increase. So this is a very, very effective way to be able to get additional free hits against enemies, as long as you have an archer who is comfortable being a little bit closer to the action. An archer who can use this to great effect is Land, because when you get Land, he is a Zen archer, which means he can use his wisdom both for his attack with his bow and to increase his AC. So you can pump your AC up to crazy high levels and still be a very, very effective archer with Land. So you can put him right behind your tank, give him all of these snapshot feats, and let him just go crazy against enemies that try to run towards you. It's a very effective way to be able to go through the game. I'm not going to go through the mythic feats that you can get because I've already done a video walking through that entire list. So I'll leave a link down below in case you want to know about the mythic feats as well. Alertness. You get a +2 bonus on perception skill checks. If you have 10 or more ranks in that skill, the bonus increases to +4. I've said it a bunch of times and I'll say it again. Perception and religion are the most important skills in the game. You definitely want to make sure you have somebody who's set up to be successful in that. But I would also venture to say that if at all possible, you want to do that at the class level right from the very beginning. Most classes get a limited amount of feats that they can take during their entire run. So if at all possible, it's preferable to avoid having to take a separate feat specifically to give you a skill. But if for whatever reason you're running a build that puts you in a situation where you need to do this, absolutely, you don't want to just go without perception or religion. However, if you go down to skill focus, you're going to get a +3 bonus on all checks involving the skill. And if you have 10 or more ranks, you get a +6 bonus to that skill. So you might want to consider whether alertness is actually better for you than just getting skill focus, which might be more advantageous. Allied Spellcaster. With the aid of an ally, you are skilled at piercing the protections of other creatures with your spells. Whenever you are adjacent to an ally who also has this feat, you receive a +2 bonus on concentration checks and level checks made to overcome spell resistance. Concentration checks. To cast a spell, you must concentrate. So basically, this is saying if you're a spellcaster and you have an enemy who's right in front of you, who's going to hit you if you cast a spell, how good at you are at being able to just fight through that and get your spell off anyway. This is actually very important because there are a lot of situations in the game where enemies will get the jump on you and you'll basically be right up under an enemy who's going to do melee damage or something terrible to you, and you're going to desperately need to be able to get a spell off in order to survive. So being able to have a decent level in concentration is important, but I'd argue it's more important later on. You don't have to necessarily focus on it right off. Right off, you want to focus on spell focus and spell penetration, which we'll get to a little bit later. Then it also gives you this bonus to cracking through their spell resistance. Spell resistance is an extraordinary ability to avoid being affected by spells. So basically what happens is if you cast a spell at an enemy, you have to be able to punch through whatever spell resistance they have first to be able to do anything to it. If their spell resistance is able to block you, then nothing will happen. All right, so it's very, very important as a spellcaster that you can cut through this. But I would argue the spell penetration feat is a better way to do that than allied spellcaster, because if you take spell penetration, you also get the mythic version available to you of spell penetration, which is going to be a significant increase to your ability to cut through those defenses. Enemy spell resistance gets very, very high as you get further and further in the game. So it is always worthwhile to find ways to crank that up so that you can be able to cut through their resistances over time. Armor proficiency, medium armor, and there's one for heavy armor, there's one for light armor. Basically, if you do not already have the ability to use this armor, taking this feat will give you the ability to do so. Whether or not that's valuable completely depends upon the type of build that you're trying to run. Blind fight and melee. Every time you miss because of concealment, you can re-roll your mischance percentile roll one time to see if you actually hit. An invisible attacker gets no advantages related to hitting you in melee. That is, you don't lose your dexterity bonus to armor class, and the attacker doesn't get the usual +2 bonus for being invisible. So again, if you want your fighter to naturally have the ability to deal with invisible and concealed enemies, of which there are a lot in this game, that's understandable, and blind fight will help you do that. Me personally, I prefer to use spells to accomplish that. You also get improved blind flight. Your melee attacks ignore the mischance for less than total concealment. You may still re-roll your mischance percentile roll for total concealment. So if you're interested in blind fight, you might want to consider this as well. You also get a few kineticist feats that are associated with this. Basically, your kineticist is able to use different infusions and elements when they're using their kineticist blast, and you can take feats that will help improve that. Whether or not this is worth it, again, depends completely upon your build. Combat casting. You get a +4 bonus on concentration checks made to cast a spell or use a spell-like ability. So I feel like this is, again, a superior way to increase your concentration checks. Basically, you just get a flat +4 bonus. So usually the way I do things when I have a spellcaster, if I don't need point blank shot and precise shot, then my first few feats are spell focus and whatever it is that, whatever magic class I want to be able to cast in, spell penetration, greater spell focus, greater spell penetration, and then combat casting. And then once you have those 5 feats, you're basically set up for success. And the other feats are about, okay, what extra flavoring do I want to add to really make the most of this build? Combat reflexes. You may make a number of additional attacks of opportunity per round equal to your dexterity bonus. With this feat, you may also make attacks of opportunity while flat-footed. So I really like this feat for Camellia. If you use the build where she keeps her rapier and buckler, because I don't consider her particularly good at casting offensive spells. So I just put a bunch of buffs on her, put something that's going to make her nice and large, and then just throw her out there in front. And any enemy that tries to run by is going to take an attack of opportunity, and she can do crazy damage with that rapier. It's really, really cool, really nice to see. She works well as a tank, especially if you pick up this. Seize the moment. When an ally who also has this feat confirms a critical hit against an opponent that you also threaten, you can make an attack of opportunity against that opponent. So this is kind of cool. There are several ways in the game where you can basically create opportunity for attacks of opportunity, and this is one of them. I personally don't think it's worth the feat unless you've got just 3 or 4 people on your team who are all critical hitting all the time. Then maybe it's worth it, but otherwise I think there are better uses of the few feats that you have. Coordinated defense. Whenever you are adjacent to an ally who also has this feat, you receive a +2 competence bonus to your combat maneuver defense. This bonus increases to +4 if the creature attempting to maneuver is larger than both you and your ally. I've never run into a situation where I felt the need to increase combat maneuver defense, but it might become more necessary if you're playing on harder levels. There are plenty of enemies that trip. I've never had an enemy try to do a bull rush. And I've only had one ever try to sunder me, and it never mattered in any of those situations. So your mileage may vary about whether or not this is actually worthwhile. Coordinated maneuvers. Whenever you are adjacent to an ally who also has this feat, you receive a +2 competence bonus on all combat maneuver checks. So combat maneuvers are things like trip, sunder, disarm. They're basically specific maneuvers that have a specific effect if you're able to successfully do them against an enemy. Whether or not this is valuable for you depends on your build and what it is that you're trying to do. By the way, it should be readily apparent, but teamwork feats basically work that both you and somebody else who you're going to be consistently close to in combat have to take the feat. All right, so both of you have to have it in order for it to work properly. But some of them are definitely very powerful, and there are some mythic paths and classes that specifically take advantage of teamwork feats and spread it around to your entire party instead of you having to manually have everyone take it. So you'll have to look around a little bit, but there are definitely ways to make this flow with everything else that you're doing. Deceitful, you get a +2 bonus on persuasion and trickery checks, along with a +4 if you have 10 or more ranks. If you need a boost in persuasion and trickery, this makes sense. Both of them are very useful skills. Defensive combat training. You excel at defending yourself from all manner of combat maneuvers. Again, I don't feel like that's necessary, but your mileage might vary. Deft hands, same thing. Skill boost for trickery and use magic device skill checks. Do you need this? If so, you might want to take it. Destructive dispel. When you successfully make a targeted dispel check against an opponent, that opponent must succeed at a fortitude save or be stunned until the start of your next turn. If the save succeeds, the opponent is instead sickened until the start of your next turn. I would say on harder levels, this is very, very useful. On normal, the only enemies that I end up trying to use the spell on are probably really hard bosses. So I'll get all the way to the end of a dungeon and then use the spell. I don't feel like it's worth taking a feat for that. But on some of the harder levels, you have to use the spell much, much more often. And having a chance to be able to stun them every time you do a dispel could be worth your time. Could be. So this feat definitely is not trash. Again, it's not useful on normal, but in other situations, it might make sense. You are especially hard to kill. When your hit point total is below 0, but you are not killed, you can fight on for one more round as if disabled. Never pick this up on normal. You should not be dying all the time. If you are, then more than likely you are doing something wrong. Also, keep in mind that half-orcs get this automatically unless you choose a different background for them. Dispel synergy. If you successfully dispel an ongoing magical effect on an opponent, that opponent takes a -2 penalty on saving throws against your spells for 1 round. So again, are you dispelling all the time? If so, this might be worth your time. Dodge. You gain a +1 dodge bonus on your AC. A condition that makes you lose your dexterity bonus to AC also makes you lose the benefits of this feat. Dodge is fantastic because of the list of feats it then opens up for you. So if you're a melee character who needs some additional defense, Dodge is going to give you some great options. So you've got combat mobility, which is going to allow you to get a +4 dodge bonus to armor class against attacks of opportunity caused when you move out of or within a threatened area. So if you're playing a class where you like to run around a lot and attack different enemies, this obviously is going to be a benefit to you. Crane style, you only take a -2 penalty on attack rolls for fighting defensively. While using this style and fighting defensively, you gain an additional +1 dodge bonus to your armor class. So all melee fighters, or in fact it might be all characters in general, have an option. When you look at an ability, it looks like a little shield. You can click on that and it's going to give you some additional defense and in exchange for taking a -4 penalty on your attack rolls. Crane style is one way to reduce that. If I remember correctly, also, if you have 3 ranks in mobility, that will also reduce it by either 1 or 2. So it's very useful to take on yourself and definitely something you want to consider for anyone who's going to be right up front. Crane Riposte. You take only a -1 penalty on attack rolls for fighting defensively. Whenever you lose the dodge bonus from Crane Wing because an attack missed you by 4 or less, the enemy provokes an attack of opportunity. Very, very nice stuff. So you're going to take even less attack rolls penalties while you're fighting defensively, and you've created yet another way for you to get an attack of opportunity. And then Crane Wing gives you a +4 dodge bonus to AC against melee attacks. So it's really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. And then, of course, we have more kineticist feats. This time for air as opposed to water. Elemental Focus. So it'll add a +1 to the difficulty class for all saving throws against spells that deal a particular type of damage, either acid, cold, electricity, or fire. So for example, again, if you're a mage and you like to cast Fireball, this will help ensure that your Fireball does as much damage as possible to those enemies and they're not able to succeed on their reflex saving throws. And you'll get Elemental Focus, and then Greater Elemental Focus does the same thing again, just gives you a +1 to the difficulty class. If you focus on using a particular type of element, these are definitely worth taking. Again, you start with Spell Focus and Spell Penetration, because if you don't hit it, nothing else matters. But once you have those, these are definitely worth adding to the list. Endurance, you gain a +2 bonus on athletic checks and +4 bonus on fortitude saves against fatigue and exhaustion. You may sleep in light or medium armor without being fatigued. I never take these. I don't feel like fatigue and exhaustion is something you have to avoid like that and be terrified of. So for me, I skip it, but your mileage may vary. Extra bombs. You could throw 4 additional bombs per day. If you're an alchemist, you absolutely need this. I'll put my alchemist build down below, but basically you can get to the point that you're throwing 5 or 6 bombs every turn. If you don't take actually more than once, you're probably going to need 2 or 3 feats of just extra bombs. If you don't take that, then you're going to blow through your whole stash way too quickly and not have any bombs left by the time you get to the end of a dungeon. So definitely worth having. Fast learner, you gain 1 additional skill point per level. I would say no. I would assume this is probably not something you want to have. If there's a particular skill that you want to specialize in, it seems to me you would just go to skill focus and boost it up that way. Or one of the other plethora of feats that you can use to get a nice bonus to your skills. Getting 1 additional skill point per level, I don't see how that's worth it. Great Fortitude, you get a +2 bonus on all fortitude saving throws. So probably by the end of the game, by like level 17, somewhere in that range, you've probably gotten all the feats that really help your build. And the last little bit is a little bit more flavoring to, just add a couple of things. At that point, if you decide you're a little bit weak in a particular saving throw, you might want to go ahead and throw in Great Fortitude, Iron Will, something of that sort. But while you're in your early levels, I wouldn't personally recommend it, because I feel like you should be boosting your saving throws using the buffs that should be available on your team. History of Terrors, same deal. This gives you a +2 on saving throws to resist mind affecting effects. You should be able to do that from your buffs. You shouldn't have to take feats for that. not taking feats might make the early lows a little bit harder, but I just feel like long term it makes way more sense. It's not going to serve your build long term to have this +2 on resist mind affecting effects if you're using your buffs and the spells you get properly. Improved initiative. Your quick reflexes allow you to react rapidly to danger. You get a +4 bonus on initiative checks. So this can be a monster feat, especially if you're in turn-based mode. In turn-based mode, if you can have 3 or 4 of your party members react before the enemy is able to get off a turn, it completely changes the face of the battle. You can wipe out 3 or 4 of them right off top. If you have someone who is responsible for crowd control, and it's very important that they get off their spells as soon as possible, this also can be a good feat investment. So sometimes I take this for Nanio because I want her shutting down their wisdom ASAP. So you have to gauge how important is it for this person to move as early as possible. Improved unarmed strike. You are considered to be armed even when unarmed. Obviously, if you're a monk, you need to take this. Deflect arrows. You must have at least one hand free to use this feat. Once per round, when you would normally be hit with an attack from a ranged weapon, you may deflect it so that you take no damage from it. I personally wouldn't take this. There are buffs you can use that are going to give you significant protection against arrows. In fact, there's a buff that's specifically called protection from arrows. You should be using that. Pummeling bully. When you use pummeling style to make an entire full attack or flurry of blows against a single target, if you hit with any of your attacks, you attempt a trip combat maneuver check as a free action. That is fantastic. A trip if you succeed on a trip combat maneuver, you will make your enemy prone. Prone enemies are significantly easier to damage. So this is great stuff. And if you have this, it does then make more sense to go into some of those combat maneuver check bonuses that we reviewed earlier to boost up your ability to do trips against enemies. Pummeling style. Whenever you use a full attack or flurry of blows to make multiple attacks against a single opponent when unarmed strikes, total the damage from all hits before applying damage reduction. So we've already covered this. It's very good stuff. It's going to help you do more damage. We already covered all the crane styles. Dragon ferocity, or in fact start with dragon style. While using this style, you gain a +2 bonus on saving throws against sleep effects, paralysis effects, and stunning effects. Further, you add 1.5 times your strength bonus on the damage roll for your first unarmed strike on a given round. Paralysis is annoying as hell. If you have one of your party members who's paralyzed and you don't have a remove paralysis scroll, woo, that's not a good situation. So the +2 bonuses on saving throws are just all right here, but it's really the second part that's really, really nice and what you want to make sure you have. Dragon ferocity then, while using dragon style, increase your strength bonus on unarmed strike damage rolls by an additional 1/2 your strength bonus to a total of double your strength bonus on the first attack and 1.5 times your strength bonus on the other attack. Obviously, playing monk using dragon style, this is going to be fantastic. And then finally, Dragon Roar. While using Dragon Style as a standard action, you can expend 2 Stunning Fist attempts to unleash a concussive roar in a 15-foot cone. Creatures caught in the cone take your unarmed strike damage and become shaken for 1d4 rounds. Keep in mind that it says creatures caught in the cone, which means this can impact your party members. So, depending upon how many other frontline fighters you have, that might affect the effectiveness of this ability. If you've got 3 other frontline fighters, it's very, very possible they're going to be running ahead of your monk sometimes or running around it, and they're going to be in the field of the cone whenever you try to use it. But if it's only you and one other person, you'll probably get more opportunities to pull this off with no problem. Perfect Strike. A Zen Archer Monk receives Perfect Strike as a bonus feat at first level, even if he does not meet the prerequisites. You can roll your attack roll twice and take the higher result. So Lan has this and he can use it to great effect. Crushing Blow. You can make a Stunning Fist attempt as a full round action. If successful, instead of stunning your target, you reduce the target's AC by an amount equal to your Wisdom modifier for 1 minute. If you're a monk, obviously your Wisdom should be very high. This is going to help you a lot. Shiden Earth Blast. So there is a, what's it called? Student of the Stone class that uses Elemental Fist, and these are different ways that you can try to change that particular class. I haven't played it yet. I honestly can't tell you how good or not good these are. If somebody has and wants to comment below, please by all means do so. And I'll leave the descriptions up for you. And then we've already talked about deflecting arrows. Intimidating prowess. Your physical might is intimidating to others. Add your strength modifier to persuasion skill when used to intimidate checks in addition to your charisma modifier. So what does this mean? If you have a fighter who is focusing on strength, there is a suite of feats you can take that will essentially give that fighter the ability to crowd control an entire room by shaking them all up. And when an opponent is shaken, they get penalties to some of their, I think it's like defensive penalties, and maybe it's also a -2 to attack. I can't remember the specifics, but basically it's going to make that opponent more vulnerable to everybody on your team. And then you can take an additional feat that's going to allow you to do more damage and be more effective against those particular types of opponents. And this is going to help ensure that your attempt to try to intimidate or demoralize those enemies to make them shaken actually succeeds. Because on top of just your regular persuasion skill amount, it'll also take the modifier for your strength. And if you're a strength warrior, your modifier should be sky high. You can ignore, we've already went through the ones where you add a couple onto a particular saving throw. You can decide for yourself if it makes sense for you. Martial weapons proficiency. So you might take this if there's a very, very specific type of weapon you want to use and the class that you get doesn't allow you to use it. All right, so you can see the list here. For example, For example, if you wanted to use a scythe or a greatsword, you have to have martial weapons proficiency in order to be able to do that. If you take a fighter or some other martial class, they'll automatically give this to you. But if you're taking a different class, you might have to manually select this feat in order to be able to use it. All right, now we're into the Metamagic feats. First, Bolster Spell. This spell, once bolstered, now deals 2 more damage per die roll to all its targets. Additionally, all enemies in 5 feet of the spell targets are dealt 2 damage per die roll of the original spell. The spell no longer applies precision damage. So obviously this is meant specifically to help area of effect spells. You can decide if it's something that you want. I usually personally don't bother with bolster spells. There's some other options here that I prefer when I'm using Metamagic. Empower. All variable numeric effects of an empowered spell are increased by half, including bonus to those rolls. Saving throws and opposed rolls are not affected, nor are spells without random variables. So you'll see some spells that will say like, we'll do 1d6 per damage, per caster level of damage, when you use the spell. Empower is going to ensure that those type of spells do even more damage than usual. By the way, in order to actually use Metamagic, when you're in the spell menu in the lower left, you'll see a little button that says Metamagic. You can click on it, and then in the circle in the middle, you can drag whatever spell you want to actually change into that little menu. And then at the top will be all the Metamagic feats that you've selected in the feat menu, and you could just select which ones you want to apply to this spell. So once you've selected a Metamagic feat, you can attach it to as many spells as you want, but keep in mind for Empower and a lot of the other Metamagic feats, it's going to increase the level of the spell once you use it. So for example, Magic Missile is a level 1 spell. If you decided to use, I don't think you can use Empower, but you might be able to use Quicken. If you use Quicken on Magic Missile, it does a level increase +4. That means it's going to go from a level 1 spell to a level 5 spell, which, depending upon your build, might actually be advantageous for you, but you just have to look through things and make sure you understand what's happening. Keep in mind, the original version of the spell will still exist. So you'll have one version that's quickened, and that's at level 5. And then you'll have the original version of the spell that's still at level 1. You don't lose the spell just because you've applied Metamagic to it. There are also mythic feats that allow you to reduce the cost of these Metamagic feats by 1. So if it's more advantageous for you for it to be a level 3 increase, a +3 level increase, instead of a +4 level increase, you can take a mythic ability in order to be able to accomplish that. Since we're already here, quickened is, casting a quickened spell is a swift action, allowing you to perform another action even after casting this quickened spell. So, for example, Woljif, he goes a long time where Scorching Ray is probably the best spell for you to use with him. But Scorching Ray, it's only available at level 2. What can you do? You could use Quicken Spell on it if you wanted to increase it from level 2 to level 6. And then not only will he be able to use Scorching Ray, but since it's a swift action and you still have a standard action that you can use during your turn, you could cast 2 Scorching Rays at the same time or in the same turn, or you could cast the swift action Scorching Ray and then right afterwards do a standard action Hellfire Ray. Basically, it's going to allow you to pump out a lot more damage in one turn. Extend spell. An extended spell lasts twice as long as normal. A spell with a duration of concentration, instantaneous or permanent, is not affected by this feat, and it's going to increase the level of the spell by 1. So there are 2 mythic abilities. One is called, what's it called? Extended spells, enduring spells. That's what it's called. Enduring spells and greater enduring spells extends the time frame of any buffs that you have. So for example, if you have protection from arrows, and I think it's like 10 minutes per level, if you take those 2 mythic abilities, it'll make protection from arrows last for 24 hours on your entire party. All right. If you have those 2 mythic abilities and you take extended spell, you can create a situation where spells that are only supposed to last for 1 round per level instead also last for 24 hours. For example, haste. Haste usually only lasts 1 round per level. If you combine these 3 things, you can make it where haste and a whole lot of other crazy useful buffs will last for 24 hours on your party. So it'll create a situation where, you know, you're going to have to spend 3 or 4 minutes putting all your buffs on. But once those bad boys are on, you're good for a whole dungeon. You could just walk through and steamroll everything you come against. Even if you don't do it that way, Extend Spell has a lot of uses. Like all the other Metamagic feats, you can reduce that level increase to, you can reduce it by 1, bringing it to 0 if you wanted to. Great options for you. Heightened Spell. A heightened spell has a higher spell level than normal, up to a maximum of 9th level. Unlike other Metamagic feats, heightened spell actually increases the effective level of the spell that it modifies. All effects dependent on spell level, such as saving throw DCs and ability to penetrate a lesser globe of invulnerability, are calculated according to the heightened level. So, obviously there are a lot of spells that depend upon DC, so this could be a way to increase their effectiveness. Honestly, I never use heightened spell because when you get to a higher spell level, you get more effective spells. Like it's very rare, you know, if you're at level 8, that there's a spell all the way down to level, 5 or 6 that you really, really want to just heighten. Usually there's something else you want to do with it, like empower it or make it quicken, something of that nature. But just bringing this one spell up, I almost never bother with that, but your mileage might vary. Maximize spell. All variable numeric effects of the spell modified by this feat are maximized. Saving throws and opposed rolls are not affected, nor are spells without random variables. Obviously, this can take spells that are meant to do damage and make them more powerful. So if that's something that would interest you, you can definitely check this out. Persistent spell. Whenever a creature targeted by a persistent spell or within its area succeeds on its saving throw against the spell, it must make another saving throw against the effect. This is going to increase the level by 2. So if you're using spells that cause an effect that is supposed to stay on the creature, like maybe they're supposed to continue burning, this is going to allow it to stay on longer and make it harder for the creature to resist this effect. We've already went through Quicken. Reach. You can alter a spell with a range of touch, close, or medium to increase its range by 1 range category, using the following order: touch, close, medium, and long. So an example of this is some of the healing spells that you get in the game. Sometimes they require you to be right next to the person in order to be able to use them. You could select Reach to give your healer some breathing room and allow them to hang back and still be able to heal people who are in the thick of the fight. There's a mythic ability called Boundless Healing that essentially does the same thing. Extends the range for all of your healing spells while also making them more powerful. Metamagic select a spell. This requires spellcraft 10 ranks. Your allies need not fear friendly fire. When casting a selective spell with an area effect and a duration of instantaneous, you can choose a number of targets in the area equal to the ability score modifier used to determine bonus spells of the same type. These targets are excluded from the effects of your spell. So, going back to Fireball, I very, very rarely use Fireball because most of the time I'm playing real time with pause and it's way too hard spur of the moment without pausing to ensure that you're not fireballing half of your party. If you had this, it would become a little bit easier to be able to just manually select these party members and then just throw a fireball in the middle of the action and be confident you're only damaging enemies. It's okay, but I would say that there are a lot of ways to get around friendly fire. You don't have to use area of effects that impact your party. There are other powers that are very, very damaging that will also ensure your party is not effective. So I don't bother to use this, but if you're really particular about specific spells and want that ability to just throw them out there, this is going to help you do that. Do you need a boost on Persuasion and Perception? If so, you can go ahead and take this. Power Attack. You can choose to take a -1 penalty on all melee attack rolls and combat maneuver checks to gain a +2 bonus on all melee damage rolls. If you are a strength-based fighter, you need Power Attack. Period. It's very difficult for me to imagine a situation where you're strength-based and right in the middle of things and Power Attack does not help you. And the way it works as a fighter, especially if you're a fighter with a high base attack bonus, you have way more attack than what you actually need. So taking this -1 penalty is not going to harm you, but that bonus to your damage rolls is going to be huge for you. Absolutely huge. Now, earlier we talked about being able to shake up an entire room where you're basically doing a demoralized check against them, and then all enemies in the room will potentially be shaken. So you have to take Power Attack, and then another feat, which I guess is lower down, called Dazzling Display, but then it gives you a couple of options. Cornigan Smash. When you damage an opponent with a power attack, you may make an immediate Persuasion Intimidate check as a free action to attempt to demoralize your opponent, meaning you can get to the point where just damaging your enemy is enough for you to make that attempt automatically, no cost to you, And if you succeed, it's going to give you a significant boost in your ability to damage that enemy further. Very powerful stuff, very good stuff. And then you have Dreadful Carnage. Whenever you reduce an enemy to 0 or fewer hit points, you can make a persuasion check to demoralize all enemies within 30 feet as a free action. So basically, by this point, as a strength character, you look for the weakest character in the room, you charge towards them, you do everything in your power to knock them out, and then you'll demoralize the entire room. If you're a Hell Knight, when you demoralize an enemy, instead of just being shaken, they're frightened. Mind you, this can be annoying because frightened enemies run away from you. So if you're not playing in turn-based mode, they can run into other rooms, draw in more characters. It can be very, very irritating to deal with. But it's also still very effective because enemies that are running away from you are not trying to hit you and they're not casting spells at you. Then you also get access to Cleave. As a standard action, you can make a single attack at your full base attack bonus against a foe within reach. And I'm sorry, I don't think we actually reviewed base attack bonus. Each creature has a base attack bonus, and it represents its combat power. As a creature gains level or hit dice, their base attack bonus improves. When a creature's base attack bonus reaches +6, +11, or +16, it receives an additional attack in combat when making a full attack. So there are some classes whose base attack bonus increases very rapidly, like fighters. They have a high increase for base attack bonus, so they can get up to that point where they're doing 5, 6, 7 attacks in one round, as opposed to like a sorcerer. Even if you decided to, for whatever reason, create a melee-based sorcerer and put some mage armor forward and have it swinging a sword, their base attack bonus is low. So it's going to take a long time, if ever, for them to be able to do the same amount of attacks. Also, you can stack additional attacks on top of what you get from your base attack bonus using something like haste, which is going to not only make your character very speedy, but also give them an additional attack anytime they're doing that full attack. Very, very powerful stuff. So Cleave says, instead of doing additional attacks with your base attack bonus, take all that bonus and attack one character, and if you hit, attack another character that's directly adjacent to the one you just attempted to hit. Now, this is very, very powerful at the beginning of the game, because at the beginning of the game, you don't have a whole lot of extra attacks. You're not using the base attack bonus as much. So being able to potentially hit 2 enemies with one swing, very nice stuff. Once you get to later levels and your base attack bonus can allow you to hit 5 or 6 times in one turn, Cleave is useless to you. So even if you get it and start using it, you definitely want to take it off later on during the game if you're playing a class with a high base attack bonus. If you're not, then you have to gauge based upon your build whether or not it's worth it. Cleaving Finish. If you make a melee attack and your target drops to 0 or fewer hit points as a result of your attack, you can make another melee attack using your highest base attack bonus against another opponent within reach. But you can only make this extra attack once per round. Very, very awesome stuff. And it's part of the reason sometimes you'll take Cleave even if you don't plan to use Cleave itself, because of the feats that it opens up, you might end up investing in it. And then improve Cleaving Finish. You can use Cleaving Finish any number of times per round. Awesome stuff. All right, Greater Bull Rush, which is a combat maneuver. A bull rush attempts to push an enemy straight back without doing any harm. And then if you get Greater Bull Rush, you'll receive a +2 bonus on checks made to bull rush a foe. And this bonus stacks with the bonus granted by bull rush. Also, whenever you bull rush an opponent, his movement provokes attack of opportunity from you and all of your allies. So this is yet another way to just create attacks of opportunity for yourself. You can have a character who maybe they don't get a high attack bonus. Maybe they're not going to do a crazy number of attacks. So therefore, it's more useful for you for this particular person to do something like Bull Rush, where they're going to push this enemy back, and it should hopefully be surrounded by a bunch of allies who will all take a free swing while this creature is being pushed. And I think at the end, for every 5 exceeds you can push. Oh, okay, this is not the one that knocks it prone. But yeah, you just push it straight back, and then hopefully it's surrounded by enough allies where they'll just be able to kill it while it's moving backwards. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Very effective. Sunder Armor. So same thing, another combat maneuver. This time you can attempt to dislodge an armor worn by your opponent. If your combat maneuver is successful, the target loses bonus from armor for 1 round. And then Greater Sunder Armor increases the check by 2. And whenever you successfully perform a Sunder, the penalty lasts for 1d4 rounds, plus 1 round for every 5 by which your attack exceeds the target's defense against combat maneuvers. So you face a lot of enemies that heavily depend upon armor. This obviously can be very, very useful. It depends upon your build and what you want to do, whether or not it's worth investing in it. Scribe Scrolls allows you to craft scrolls during camping. Somebody on your team should probably have this. You can use scrolls to fill gaps on your team for things that you're not able to do. So for example, there's a spell, I can never remember the name of the spell when I need it, but there's a spell you get later on in the game that gives a huge increase to the damage your melee characters can do, but it requires a dinosaur bone, which are actually pretty rare in the game. Well, to get around that, you can instead make scrolls of that particular ability. And then it does not cost dinosaur bones for you to be able to use the scroll version of it. So it's very, very nice to fill gaps regarding things that maybe you don't have. Keep in mind, in order to create a scroll, the character who's creating it has to know the spell. So you can't just stick this on, Regal and figure, oh, okay, now I'll be able to create whatever scrolls that I want. No, it has to be a character that actually would already know that particular spell and can go in and recreate it on the scroll. You also have to buy some additional things. They have like scroll kits in stores. You'll see them in order to be able to create scrolls, but that shouldn't be a big deal. And before I forget, almost forgot, brew potions. I automatically got this because I'm an alchemist. Allows you to brew potions of spells up to level 3 during camping. So this can be very useful again if you have gaps that need to be filled. Some things that you don't have spells for, or that you don't want to have to cast a spell for. For example, Windewog does not have spells, doesn't come with spells. So she does not have the ability to cast Mage Armor. You can have someone brew potions for her that will then allow her to cast Mage Armor while anybody having to cast an additional spell. Stuff like that, where you can look through the crafting options and see, is there a type of potion I would like to be able to craft on a regular basis where this would be useful to me? There's also a mythic version of brew potions that will allow you to be able to craft potions 3 through 6, in case you see that and were wondering how to get that. Shake It Off. When you are adjacent to one or more allies who also have this feat, you gain a +1 bonus on saving throws per such ally. This can be very, very powerful, especially if you're running a summoner build. If you're running a build where you're throwing out 3 or 4 summons all the time anyway, then this could work out to an almost permanent +4 bonus for you, your summons, and depending upon what type of class or mythic path you're running, your entire team. So definitely something to consider. Shield proficiency. You become proficient with bucklers, light shields, and heavy shields. I never use shields. You do not need shields on normal to be able to tank effectively, but if for whatever reason you're in a situation where you need a shield and your class doesn't automatically give it, this could be a good option for you. Shielded Caster. Whenever you are adjacent to an ally who has this feat, you receive a +4 competence bonus on concentration checks. And this increases if you or your ally is wearing a shield. This can be useful if you want to boost up your concentration checks. I've never felt the need to boost it up beyond the +4 that you get from concentration that we covered earlier. But if for whatever reason, I haven't been through Acts 5 and 6 yet. So could be that later on in the game, when things are at their very hardest, you really, really need a bonus on concentration checks. And if so, you should go ahead and pick up this feat. We already talked about skill focus, spell focus. Add +1 to the DC for all saving throws against spells from a school of magic that you select. So it has all the schools here, and then on top of that, you'll be able to get greater spell focus, which is going to give you just an additional +1. So I always start out with these, not just because getting the +2 to DC is nice for your spells, but also because it opens up the mythic feats for spell focus. So if you want to specialize further in a particular area, it gives you the ability to do so. And then you also get spell specialization. Select one spell. Treat your caster level as being too higher for all level variable effects of the spell. So what you'll see a lot of is, I think especially in Necromancer, like the Lich gets a lot of spells like this, where it'll say this spell does 1d6 damage per caster level. So if you increase your caster level by 2, and that's still below the limit, because a lot of these spells will say up to a maximum of 15d6. So you have to consider, are you already at the limit? But if you're not, then pumping up that caster level higher is going to enable you to reach higher levels of damage or ability with a particular spell. And at the beginning of each level up, it will ask you again, which spell do you want to specialize? So as you get new spells, and as the spell you want to specialize in changes, you'll be able to switch it out while you're getting more powerful. Great, great stuff. That should be all here, right? Yep. Spell penetration. Your spells break through spell resistance more easily than most. You get a +2 bonus on caster level checks made to overcome a creature's spell resistance. Absolute must. It doesn't matter really what kind of mage you are. Spell penetration is definitely a requirement. Taking this opens up the mythic version of this particular feat. That mythic feat is always the first mythic feat that I take when I'm a caster. Enemy spell resistance gets sky high in this game. You need as much spell penetration as you can possibly get. Do you need more mobility and stealth? If so, this is worth taking. Toughness. You gain +3 hit points. Every hit die you possess beyond 3, you gain an additional +1 hit point. I never take this. You don't even need a shield. You definitely don't need toughness. But if you decide you want it, hey, that's your prerogative. 2-weapon fighting. Your penalties on attack rolls for fighting with 2 weapons are reduced. The penalty for your primary hand lessens by 2, and the one for your offhand lessens by 6. This is an absolute requirement if you're fighting with 2 separate weapons, like 2 daggers or 2 kukris. It is also absolutely a requirement if you are fighting with a weapon that is essentially one physical thing, but it is still treated as 2 weapons. For example, the Orc Double Blade. It is one whole blade, but each blade is considered to be 2 separate weapons. Therefore, you need 2-weapon fighting in order to reduce the attack penalties you would usually take. Regal comes with gnome hooked hammers. Gnome hooked hammers are another example of weapons that are considered to be 2 weapons, even though it is one physical thing. Therefore, you need 2-weapon fighting. And if you take 2-weapon fighting, or you should absolutely also go down the line, take improved 2-weapon fighting. It's going to get you a second attack with your offhand weapon, albeit at a -5 penalty. There are about 3, maybe 4 more of these. I would suggest you take them all. Regal is an example of a fighter that can get up to, I think, around 8 attacks in one turn. If you take all of his feats, it just makes him an absolute monster. And you also get bashing finish, because if you have a shield, it will also be considered a weapon. You follow a powerful blow from your weapon with an opportunistic bash from your shield. Whenever you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, you can make a shield bash attack against the same target using the same bonus as a free action. Really, really cool stuff. In late game, I might respec Seela just to have her be sword and board and see what this all is like. Should be interesting stuff. Double Slice. Your offhand weapon while dual wielding strikes with greater power. Add your strength bonus to damage rolls made with your offhand weapon. Are you using two weapons? Do you have a decent strength score where you would want to make sure you could add your full modifier? If so, this is definitely worth taking. Shield Master. You do not suffer any penalties on attack rolls made with a shield while you are wielding another weapon. Definitely, obviously want this if you're going sword and board. Arcane Armor Training. Reduce the arcane spell failure chance due to the armor you are wearing by 10% for any spells you cast. So, if you are wearing heavier, in fact, any armor whatsoever, when you look at the stats, it will have a spell failure chance. The reasoning being that spellcasters should not be using heavier armor. And heavy armor, that failure chance can go up to like 50%. Mind you, this does not apply to clerics. Clerics can wear as heavy armor as they want, cast whatever. I think basically anything that uses divination, if I remember correctly. So oracles, I believe, can also wear whatever they want. But otherwise, sorcerers, wizards, they're not supposed to be wearing armor. You're going to experience a spell failure chance if you do, unless you take this feat or you're in a class that is going to allow you to lower it automatically. Like, I think, Hell Knight Signifiers. They're essentially mages who are meant to be wearing heavy armor. So as you level up in that class, you're going to get better and better at casting spells while wearing heavy armor. Rapid Shot. When making a full attack with a ranged weapon, you can fire one additional time this round at your highest bonus. All of your attack rolls take a -2 penalty when using Rapid Shot. So this is absolutely fantastic for archers. It's going to allow you to stack on an additional attack. Alchemists can also make use of this. Because your attack bonus is getting so high, taking that -2 to attack doesn't harm you, especially long term. Archers get sky-high attack bonuses that are more than what they need. So they take penalties to attack from Rapid Shot and Deadly Aim and things of that nature in exchange for either more attacks or more damage, because that makes sense for their particular build. Mini Shot. When making a full attack with a bow, your first attack fires 2 arrows. If the attack hits, both arrows hit. Apply precision-based damage, such as sneak attack and critical hit damage, only once for this attack. Damage bonuses from using a composite bow with a high strength bonus apply to each arrow, as do other damage bonuses, such as ranger's favorite enemy bonuses. This is great. It's gonna basically help you do more damage. When it talks about composite bows, so long bows, short bows, you have just regular bows that you can use, and then you have what are composite bows. If it's a composite bow, that means it is going to take your strength modifier into account when you fire, and that strength modifier will be used to add additional damage to your shot. I think we already went over snapshot, right? I think so. Sorry, it's been so many that I'm trying to make sure. I thought we did. No? Okay. Where's snapshot at? We'll go over snapshot when it has the full suite. Weapon finesse. When a light weapon, elven curved blade, f-stock, or rapier made for a creature of your size category, you may use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier on attack rolls. So obviously this is very useful whenever you're using light weapons like daggers or kukris, and you're depending on dexterity. You don't want your strength to be what's taken into account when you're attacking. Alduri Dueling Mastery. You gain a +2 bonus on initiative checks as long as you start combat with a dueling sword. Obviously, if you're a duelist, this is absolutely fantastic for you. Piranha Strike. When wielding a light weapon or any other weapon that can be used with weapon finesse, you can choose to take a -1 penalty on all melee attack rolls and combat maneuver checks to gain a +2 bonus on all melee damage rolls. So same thing I talked about before. You sacrifice a little bit of attack gain some damage in exchange, your base attack bonus gets so high, the penalty doesn't matter that much. Fighter's Finesse. The fighter gains the benefit of the Weapon Finesse feat with all melee weapons that belong to the associated fire weapon group. The fighter must have the Weapon Finesse feat before choosing this option. So as opposed to choosing, it basically takes this and then applies it to a whole bunch of different weapons, and it'll do that automatically for you as you're leveling up as a fighter. I don't think you have to take this manually. Fencing Grace. Choose one kind of light or one-handed piercing weapon, such as a rapier. When wielding your chosen weapon one-handed, you can add your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier to that weapon's damage. So, a person who takes advantage of this is Camellia, because even though she has a buckler in the other hand, the buckler doesn't count as another weapon. So you can have that and still be considered to be one-handed with your weapon, and she can use this to great effect. Slashing Grace. Choose one kind of light or one-handed slashing weapon. When wielding your chosen weapon one-handed, you can treat it as a one-handed piercing melee weapon for all feats and class abilities that require such a weapon, such as a duelist precise strike. This can also be very good stuff depending upon your build. Bash and Finish. Whenever you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, you can make a... Oh, we already went over that. Cleave and Finish, Critical Mastery. When you score a critical hit, you can apply the effects of 2 critical feats in addition to the damage dealt. So we haven't went over any critical feats yet, but I'll note this again when we do. We covered Dragon Ferocity, Fury's Fall. When making a trip attack, add your dexterity bonus to your combat maneuver bonus. So, are you using trip on a regular basis? Are you a dexterity-based fighter? If so, this is going to work for you. We did Greater Bull Rush. Dirty Trick. You receive a +2 bonus on checks made to attempt a dirty trick. This bonus stacks with the bonus granted by a dirty trick, and if you're successful, the penalty lasts for 1d4 rounds. Dirty Trick basically is a combat maneuver that attempts to apply a negative status on an enemy, such as blinded. If you're using Dirty Trick a lot, obviously you want to take Greater Dirty Trick. Greater Disarm. So Disarm obviously attempts to disarm an enemy that's holding a weapon. This bonus stacks with the bonus granted for Disarm. Whenever you successfully perform a Disarm, the penalty lasts for 1d4 rounds. So if you're using Disarm on a regular basis, which some builds do, such as Duelist, you're probably going to want to go ahead and grab Greater Disarm as well. We already did Greater Elemental Focus. Greater Shield Focus is going to add a +1 to the AC bonus granted by your shield. Again, I don't use shields. Even if I did, I probably wouldn't bother taking this, but your mileage may vary. We already did Greater Spell Focus. We've already went over Sunder Armor, I believe. We already went over Trip. We already did 2-weapon fighting. I don't think we did Weapon Focus. So this is Greater Weapon Focus, but they do the same thing. You gain a +1 bonus on attack rolls. So usually as a fighter, what will happen is first you take Weapon Focus. It's going to give you that +1 bonus to attack. Then you take Power Attack, which is going to even out that +1 to attack, but also you're going to get some additional damage. I think there are only certain classes that get access to Greater Weapon Focus. Yeah, if you look over here, over to the right, it says Fighter Level 8. And then Greater Weapon Specialization, Fighter Level 12. So with Weapon Specialization, you get a +2 bonus on all damage rolls, rather. So with Weapon and Greater Weapon Specialization, you're basically going to get a +4 on damage rolls. I think only fighters can take that. We've already talked about Cleave Finish, 2-weapon fighting. Lingering Performance. The bonuses and penalties from your bardic performance continue for 2 rounds after you cease performing. Are you a bard? Or maybe you're an Azada and you're using specific songs? If so, this could be very, very helpful for you. We already went Precise Shot. Selective Channel. Whenever you channel positive energy to heal the living or channel negative energy to heal the undead, you do not affect enemies when you channel, and the opposite is true as well. This looks good. I never bother taking it because in practice, most times you're probably not using channel energy to heal your allies. Most of the time, you're probably doing a targeted heal against a specific person who is getting hit up. And so because of that, this kind of becomes wasted. You can take it if you like, but I would say it's not worth it. Shield Master. You do not suffer any penalties on attack rolls made with a shield while you are wielding another weapon. Oh, I think we already did this. Yes. This is something you want to take if you have a shield. We already looked at that. Arcane Focus. You have to be an elf in order to be able to take this. You get a racial trait, a +2 racial bonus on concentration checks made to cast spells defensively, and a +1 bonus on caster level checks to overcome spell resistance. So obviously there are better ways to increase both your concentration checks and your spell resistance separately. But if you're doing both at the same time, this might be something you want to consider. They're small boosts, so you can make your own decision. Arcane Strike, which requires you to be able to cast arcane spells. Spending a swift action each round, you can imbue your weapons with a fraction of your power. For 1 round, your weapons deal +1 damage and are treated as magic for the purpose of overcoming damage reduction. And then this can increase over time. So, is that something you're interested in? It's only a swift action, so it's an easy way to increase some of your power. Could be worthwhile. We already went over Armor Focus. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we didn't do Armor Focus. This grants you a +1 to AC bonus on a particular type of armor. I never take this. Just having the armor is more than enough. This is all armor proficiency. Armor is for your person. Barding is for your pet. And there are some nice armors that your pets can actually equip. They all pets also come with a standard build that they can be spec for, whether it be focus on multiple attacks or focus on being able to trip and bull rush, things of that nature. There is one version that allows them to specifically focus on being more tanky, and in that, they'll automatically get the feats for light barding and medium barding. You just have to manually select heavy barding. Augment Summoning. Each creature you conjure with any summon spell gains a +4 enhancement bonus to strength and constitution for the duration of the spell that summons it. And then Superior Summoning allows you, whenever you use a summon that summons multiple creatures, it will add 1 additional creature to that summon. So if you are a summoner and you're going to be using summons on a regular basis, this is absolutely something that you want to pick up. It does require spell focus conjuration. Back to back. While you are flanked and adjacent to an ally with this feat, you receive a +2 circumstance bonus to AC against attacks from opponents flanking you. This is nice, and I believe there's a couple of necklaces you can get where if you put it on 2 separate party members, they'll increase the bonus to +4 AC instead of just +2. So if you're looking for some additional AC, this might be something to consider. Blinding Critical. This calls back to the critical mastery that we referred to before. So Blinding Critical is one of the options that you can use. Whenever you score a critical hit, your opponent is permanently blinded. A successful Fortitude save reduces this to dazzled for 1d4 rounds. Blinding your enemies can be very, very powerful. So if you're doing criticals on a regular basis, you should absolutely be picking 1, if not 2 of these critical feats to make sure you're applying those statuses in case enemies don't flat out die from your crits. Blood Drinker. 3 times per day, you can drink blood from an unconscious, helpless, sleeping, or paralyzed living creature. And from a role-playing standpoint, this is obviously great. Being able to just bite into and snack on your enemies while you're walking around makes you even more evil as hell. In reality, how often are you actually going to use this, especially considering the pitiful amount that you're actually healed by it? I'd offer not that often, so therefore I wouldn't suggest taking this. Blood Feaster. Whenever you use Blood Drinker, you gain a +2 bonus on damage rolls and a +1 bonus on athletics checks. Is that cool that you can drink blood and then suddenly get a rush of power? Yes, it's cool. It definitely adds to the roleplay. I stick to what I originally said. Probably you're going to skip these 2. Breath of Experience. You get a +2 bonus on all knowledge and lore skill checks. You must be an elf, dwarf, or gnome in order to be able to take this feat. I would say this is not worth it. Most of the knowledge or lore feats are not, they're great. They're all used, but do you need to take a specific feat in order to gain just a piddly +2 bonus with it? I would say no, but your mileage may vary. We already went over brew potions. Bull Rush, we already went over. Cautious Fighter, when fighting defensively, your dodge bonus to AC increases by 2. You have to be a halfling to take this. Are you trying to be a fantastic tank as a halfling? That's kind of funny. If so, you could obviously take this. Otherwise, I would leave it alone. Combat Expertise. You can choose to take a -1 penalty on melee attack rolls and combat maneuver checks to gain a +1 dodge bonus to your armor class. I don't feel like this is worth it, but your mileage may vary. It's just a +1 dodge bonus. There are better ways to be able to increase your defense that do not also harm your ability to do attack rolls. We already went over Corning and Smash. We already went over the Crane feats. Critical Focus. You are trained in the art of causing pain. You receive a +4 circumstance bonus on attack rolls made to confirm critical hits. Are you doing critical hits on a regular basis? Or do you feel like you're capable of that? If so, this is absolutely something that you should take. Critical hits are absolutely devastating in this game. And then we also have the list of critical feats. So you can blind enemies, you can make them exhausted, you can sicken them, you can stagger them, or you can tire them out. And if you have critical mastery, it'll allow you to do 2 of these. So fighters can do 2 of these for every crit. Everybody else has to choose 1. I believe we went over Crushing Blow. Dazzling Display. While wielding the weapon in which you have weapon focus, you can perform a bewildering show of prowess as a full round action and make a persuasion check to demoralize all foes within 30 feet who can see your display. So, as is, I don't particularly like it because you have to use a full round action. However, there is a mythic ability for Dazzling Display that you can take, which allows you to cast it either as a swift move or standard action, each with its own separate penalty. That makes it a little bit more viable in my opinion, but regardless, you have to take this if you want to get to the list of feats that I spoke about before that are required in order for you to be able to demoralize entire rooms of people as a free action. So Power Attack, Dazzling Display, Cleave, Dreadful Carnage, Intimidating Prowess, Shatter Defenses. That's a whole lot of feats for most builds. Most builds are only getting 10 feats. That's 6 right there. So that's why I said really fighters and fighter type characters can take the most advantage of this because, of course, as a fighter, you're going to get a lot more feats than you would as anybody else. Did this. What's Disarming Strike? Whenever you score a critical hit with a melee attack, you can disarm your opponent in addition to the normal damage dealt by the attack. So cool stuff. You have to have disarm and an intelligence of 13 along with a basic attack bonus of 9 in order to be able to use this. But if you're doing a disarm build, it could definitely be worthwhile. Discerning Eye. You must be an elf or half elf. You receive a +2 racial bonus on saving throws against illusion spells and a +2 bonus on use magic device skill checks. If you're an elf, your background will give you this automatically. Otherwise, you can take it as a feat. I would say that wouldn't be worthwhile. It's great as a background, getting it automatically. As a feat you manually take, nah. Disruptive. The DC to cast spells defensively increases by +4 for all enemies that are within 10 feet of you. That's interesting. I'll be honest, I'm still not sure how I feel about this because I very rarely see this wording of DC to cast spells defensively increases by 4. So I'm not clear on how impactful or effective a +4 increase in this area actually is. If somebody else has used this feat or used a class that uses this feat more and it can explain it, I would definitely appreciate that. I honestly can't give you a real perspective on whether or not this feat is worth taking. We did Double Slice, we did Dragon Roar, Dreadful Carnage. Echoes of Stone, you get this as a background if you choose an Oread. It's awesome. Elemental Fist, we've already covered that. Elven Spirit, you can get this as a half elf automatically. It's awesome. I wouldn't select it as a feat. We did that. I think we already did that. Oh, but it's basically the same as martial weapon proficiency. Do you want to use something on this list of weapons that your class doesn't allow you to use? Pick this up. Extra arcane pool. Do you have an arcane pool? Do you need more in your arcane pool? Then this is worth picking up. Bane weapon. Do you have a Bane weapon? If you do, this is worth picking up. This is for Inquisitors. Arcane pool are for Eldritch class, and I think Magus uses it, if I remember correctly. Blood Rage. Are you a Blood Rager? Actually, wait, no. If you're a Blood Rager, I would say you don't need this. I would say if you're a Blood Rager, you should be getting the Mythic ability that allows you to rage constantly without needing to stop. So therefore, this extra 6 additional rounds per day, not useful for you. Just get the Mythic ability. It's a much better investment. Extra channel. You can channel energy 2 additional times per day. I would say no. Don't bother with this. The healers that you get naturally, so Sale and Darren, they get plenty of channel energy opportunities. And then on top of that, of course, they have the spells that allow you to heal your allies individually. And as you level up, you're going to get spells that do heals across the entire party automatically, essentially mimicking the effects of channel energy. Being able to add 2 more instances of this doesn't make sense. And I'd argue, if you're creating your own cleric and you feel like you don't have enough channel energy opportunities, it's probably because you didn't specialize yourself to be able to do that anyway. So why take a feat? The only situation where I say this does make sense is if you're trying to specifically create someone who's meant to take on the undead, and you want to be able to channel damage undead more often. But even that, I would say, is not worth it, because I feel like there's not enough undead in the game for you to really, having only went through the first 4 acts, having not seen acts 5 and 6 yet, I don't feel like there's enough undead in the game to justify specializing yourself specifically around dealing with the undead. You got extra channel, Imperial Sorcerer, Hex Channeler, Hospitalator, Oracle Shaman. My advice is the same for all of them, but you can make your own decision. Extra Lay on Hands. It's just a personal thing with me. I don't like making my paladins healers. I feel like clerics or oracles fill that role significantly better. I want my paladins focused on melee damage. If for whatever reason you decide that you want to take Sela or your own paladin and make them the main healer for your group, or you like some of the additional effects that Lay on Hands can do, like they can take away exhaustion, they can take away paralysis, things of that nature. If you want extra uses of that, then you can go ahead and do this. I would not personally take this feat. Extra performance. You can use bardic performances for 6 additional rounds per day. Are you running a build that's based around singing songs? Do you want to be able to sing those songs for longer? This absolutely makes sense. Some of the songs you get in this game, again, are really, really nice. And obviously, as Scald, you could do the same thing. I've already spoken about Rage. You should be getting the ability that just lets you rage on end. Extra Rage Power. So these are a bunch of different beast totems and celestial totems and different things that you can take when you are a Blood Rager. The list is absolutely fantastic. There is no wrong way to go about it. So you can make your own decision about what makes sense for your build, whether you want to do crit damage, whether you want to do natural weapon attacks, whatever it is you want to do. It's absolutely great stuff. Go ahead, dig in. We already did Blind Fight. Penetrating Strike, or Greater Penetrating Strike. Your attacks made with weapons selected with weapon focus ignore up to 10 points of damage reduction. That is nothing to sneeze at. Again, the vast majority of enemies you go up against have damage reduction and plenty of it. The more you are able to sidestep their damage reduction, the more damage you're going to do when you're successfully able to hit. This is worth taking, and you can only take it if you're a fighter who's level 16 who is taking weapon focus. So if you've done all that, why wouldn't you go ahead and just pick it up? I already went over spell penetration. Vital Strike. Do we do Vital Strike? As a standard action, you can make one attack at your highest base attack bonus that deals additional damage. Roll the weapon's damage dice for the attack 4 times and add the results together before adding bonuses from strength, weapon abilities, precision-based damage, and other damage bonuses. People have been telling me time and time again that this is just absolutely amazing, that you can do massive amounts of damage with it. I personally have never used Vital Strike. There is a rogue build, I think Rowdy is the name of it. There's a rogue class rather that specifically revolves around using Vital Strike, but I haven't played with it, so I don't completely get why it's so great and what else you need to take in order to make it even better. If somebody wants to comment down below, please do so. I don't want to provide misinformation. I do know that Owlcat released publicly that they have not made this available for ranged damage. So even though it says one attack, it's actually only one melee attack. Moving on. Hammer the Gap. When you make a full attack, each consecutive hit against the same opponent deals extra damage equal to the number of previous consecutive hits you have made against that opponent this turn. The damage is multiplied on a critical hit. This can do massive damage, but make sure you pay attention to the wording, consecutive hit. So it's not enough that your character is doing 8 attacks. They have to be doing 8 attacks that actually are going to consistently hit. So for archers, this is a monster ability because again, their attack bonus gets sky high. They're going to hit a lot. Even if they are attacking 6 or 7 times, they're going to be able to hit 4 or 5 times as long as you've built them up properly. This is all good. As opposed to melee characters who oftentimes might miss a little bit more, like again, Regil. Regil will get 8 attacks. He might only hit 4 or 5 of them. He's taking more and more attack penalties as he gets further through his attacks. So it's questionable how good Hammer the Gap is actually for melee characters like him. But for archers or other ranged people who are consistently doing ranged attacks, Hammer the Gap is amazing. Definitely something you should consider. Already did improve blind fight, improve critical. You can choose one type of weapon. When using the weapon you selected, your threat range is double. So that means, pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that let's say you have a weapon that it says you do a crit if you roll a 19 or a 20. Instead, it's going to say that you can roll a crit if you do a 18, 19, or 20. Something along those ranges. Basically, it increases the dice rolls you can do that will result in a critical attack. So if you have a build focused around critical attacks, this is absolutely going to help you. Improved elven immunities. Again, you have to be an elf or half elf. You're going to get more resistance to enchantment spells. They get this automatically with their base background. I would not recommend you take this as a feat, but getting it automatically as an elf is very nice. We already talked about fortitude, will, reflexes. We already talked about precise shot. We already talked about vital strike, indomitable mount. Once per round, when your mount fails a saving throw, you can make a mobility check. Your mount makes it save if your mobility check result is greater than the DC of the opponent's attack. So if you are doing mounted combat, you want your mobility score to be sky high, because you get a bunch of different feats like this where you can basically use your mobility score to protect your mount from attacks. And of course, if you're doing mounted combat, it is all about being on your mount. Once you step off that mount, you are doing significantly less damage. So if you're doing mounted combat, this is a great feat to have. Iron Guts, only available to Dwarf and Half-Orc. They get a +2 racial bonus on saving throws against any effect, causing nauseating or sicking conditions. Great that they get this automatically. I wouldn't take it as a feat separately. Same with +1 natural armor bonus to AC you get from Iron Hide. Great for them. I wouldn't take it. Life Dominant Soul, specific to the Dampier. You are healed by both the channel positive energy used to heal living creatures and channel negative energy used to heal undead, but both only heal half the normal amount. You still take damage from positive energy used to harm undead, such as that from channeled energy and lay on hands. So what does this mean? If you are a Dampier, the healers that you get, so Sale and Darren, neither one of them channel negative energy. So unless you've rolled a negative energy channeling cleric, it would be useful to you to take this feat so that you can benefit when they channel positive energy to heal the party. Mind you, you will only be healed by half from channeled positive energy. If they do an individual power, such as cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, heal, things of that nature, you still take damage from those. You don't want to you have them use that against your person. Another note, the word on the street is this is broken. I haven't had an opportunity to test that yet, so I cannot confirm that. But a couple of people have posted saying that this actually doesn't work properly in the game. I haven't gotten clarification on what that means. It doesn't work properly, but if you decide to take it, make sure you test it out and ensure that it's actually working so that you'll know if you need to respec. Magical Tail. This is only available to Kitsune. Basically, each tail is going to give you an enchantment spell that you can use. There is a class called Nine-Tailed Air that automatically gives you these feats over time. Otherwise, you could take them manually. I don't think you should. I don't think that makes very much sense. In the class, in the build, it makes complete sense because you're just stacking more enchantment spells on a class that is built around being able to do enchantment spells. But otherwise, I feel like you can probably go ahead and leave these alone. I'll leave a link down below for the build in case you're curious about how it works. Mini Shot. We already did this. Metamagic, completely normal spell. You can make your spell a bit less magical. Level decrease 1. A completely normal spell uses up a spell slot 1 level lower than the spell's actual level. So, if that's something that's interesting to you, actually, I think this is a trickster feat. Now I think about it, yeah. So where it says on the right, Perception 2 rank, that's something that you get when you're on the Trickster Mythic path. If you take 2 ranks of Perception, they're going to give you a list of feats that are only available from doing that in the Trickster Mythic path. And as you will see later, some of them are ridiculous. And okay, so this probably, if you wanted to take like one of your level 9 spells or something like that and bring it down a notch to give you more castings, this will allow you to do it. Missile Shield. You must be using a shield to use this feat. Once per round, when you would normally be hit with an attack from a ranged weapon, you may deflect it so that you take no damage. Again, you should be doing other things that allow you to deflect arrows and things of that nature, but your mileage may vary about how useful this is. Mounted Combat. Once per round, when your mount is hit in combat, you attempt a mobility check to negate the hit. The hit is negated if your mobility check result is greater than the opponent's attack roll. So again, Mounted Combat, you absolutely want to have your mobility sky high as possible. Mounted Shield allows you to take the armor, the AC from your shield, and add it to the AC for your mount, but not the actual enhancement that's on the shield, just the natural AC that it gets. Spirited Charge, I think it doubles the weapon damage when you are able to successfully do a charge. And then Trample is a combat maneuver where you do normal damage and then knock the enemy prone. All of it cool, all of it stuff that's available to you when you're doing mounted combat. I haven't tested it out myself yet, but from everything I've heard, mounted combat is really, really cool in this game. Mummers of Earth, Orieds get this with Echoes of Stone. You become aware of all creatures within 15 feet that are in contact with the ground. Echoes of Stone, I think they get that from Student of Stone, which is a class that is specific to the Oried. I feel like you should be doing other things again that are going to allow you to reveal creatures who are invisible or concealed, things of that nature. So you definitely shouldn't be manually taking this, but otherwise, I think they get this automatically if you have the class, so you don't even have to worry about that. Natural Charmer. You once per day, you can take 20 on your next persuasion skill check. To me, You have to have a charisma of 17 to even take this anyway. So you should just be leveling up your persuasion, and then you should need to be able to take out 20 on a skill check. Like, persuasion isn't that big of a deal for the most part. I've been able to pass my checks, especially when you get to later levels with no problem. I don't think this is worth it. Natural spell. You can cast spells while using wild shape. You substitute various noises and gestures for the normal verbal and somatic components of a spell. Are you using wild shape? Do you have spells you wish you could cast while you're in wild shape? Then this obviously makes a whole lot of sense, and it's pretty cool, honestly. Outflank. Whenever you and an ally who also has this feat are flanking the same creature, your flanking bonus on attack rolls increases to +4. In addition, whenever you score a critical hit against the flanked creature, it provokes an attack of opportunity from your ally. This is a monster feat. A monster feat. Everybody who is a frontline fighter for you should have this feat, including your pets, which means for your pets at level 4, when it's time for them to increase their attribute, all of them should be increasing intelligence. If I remember correctly, most of the pets that you get only come with a 2 in intelligence. You've got to manually give them a 3 so that they will be able to use this feat. It's absolutely worth it. It is absolutely a monster increase for both their attack rolls and their ability to do attacks of opportunity, because there should be at least 2, maybe even 3 people on your team that are doing critical hits on a regular basis. We've already went over penetrating strike. Ignoring damage reduction is fantastic. Pretty sure we went over perfect strike. We went over piranha strike, right? We did. Yes, we did. Point blank master. Choose one type of ranged weapon. You do not provoke attacks of opportunity when firing the selected weapon while threatened. Absolutely a must. Absolutely a must. Land gets this automatically as he moves forward, providing even further confirmation that snapshot is something he should absolutely be using. But yeah, you're going to enter into situations all the time where melee characters are going to run right up on your archers. They still need to be able to fire. Precise strike. Whenever you and an ally who also has his feet are flanking the same creature, you deal an additional 1d6 points of precision damage with each successful melee attack. I mean, it's cool, it's damage, but this isn't a priority. This isn't something all that crazy, to be honest. We already went pummeling bully. Did we do pummeling charge? You can charge and make a full attack or flurry of blows at the end of your charge as part of the charge action. Obviously, that's fantastic. Obviously, if you're using pummeling style, that's something that you should absolutely be making use of. Ray shield. You must be using a light, heavy, or tower shield to use this feat. You add your shield bonus to your touch AC. Touch AC is usually going to be your lowest AC, so if you really need a full pure tank, this is a great way to make them more defensive. There's also a mythic feat you can take that will allow you to increase your touch AC if that's something that you really want to focus on. Razor Tucks, you can make a bite attack for 1d4 points of damage plus your strength modifier. Are you using natural attacks? Is this something you'd be interested in? You have to be a half orc, so make a decision for yourself about whether or not that fits with the rest of your build. Seize the moment. When an ally who also has this feat confirms a critical hit against an opponent that you also threaten, you can make an attack of opportunity against that opponent. Obviously, attacks of opportunity are great. Is seize the moment that great? Not really, unless you're in one of those classes who has a certain amount of teamwork feats that they take automatically. So sometimes you have to take 5, or 6. And if you choose a specific mythic path that has more teamwork feats as well, then you might come down to the point like, okay, I've got a couple of options that I can play with. Seize the moment, being able to do more attacks of opportunity might appeal to you. Shadow play. Characters with this feat cast shadow spells at a +2 character caster level. You have to be a gnome to get this. They get it automatically. You can decide for yourself if it makes sense for your particular build. We already went over the Shitan skills. Shatter defenses is what I was referring to before about getting an advantage on enemies who are shaken. So if they're shaken, frightened, or panicked by you this round, it will be flat-footed to your attacks until the end of your next turn. Will it let me? It won't let me select it, but flat-footed basically makes them more vulnerable. It lowers their defenses. Very, very good stuff. We already went over shield focus, shield wall. Simple weapon proficiency. Obviously, it's just another way to get access to more weapons. Spirited charge, exactly what I said. Deal double damage with melee weapons. Steel soul, only for the dwarf. Only if you have hardy, you get some nice bonuses to your defensive capabilities. Stony step, only for Oread. You get a boost to your mobility and ignore difficult terrain underground. I would say this is only useful if you're getting it automatically. Up to you. We did this, we did this, we did this. Tandem trip. Whenever you attempt a trip combat maneuver against an enemy threatened by an ally with this feat, you roll twice and take the better result. So wolves automatically get trip when they bite an enemy. And there are some builds you can use where not only would you have a wolf, but you can also summon wolves. For example, Monster Tactician. You can, I think for the first 12, maybe 14 levels of that build, the summons that you throw out can put out multiple wolves, and your teamwork feats automatically apply to them. So you could create a situation where you have 4 or 5 wolves running around, all of them biting enemies, all of them automatically attempting to trip enemies every time they bite. And if they all have tandem trip, there's a much, much better chance that they're going to successfully be able to do that. And it can be extremely powerful, especially for those 1 through 10 early levels. Throw anything. You receive a +1 circumstance bonus on attack rolls made with thrown splash weapons. Target critical. Tower shield proficiency. You become proficient with tower shields. So tower shields are basically the largest and most defensive skills you can get. Mind you, you take a massive penalty to attack when you're carrying a tower shield. So it's no small thing. Carefully consider whether or not it's something that's actually worth it for you. Trample. You gain the ability to trample enemies. I think we dealt with this. You deal damage and then knock them prone as if it was one natural attack. We already talked about Trick, Vital Strike. Vulpine Pounce is specific only to Kitsune. You gain Pounce when you're in your Kitsune form. Pounce means that when you do a charge attack, you do a full attack, which can be extremely powerful stuff, especially if you combine it with some of the things that'll make you do more damage during a charge anyway. So if you're doing a natural attack build, this might be something you want to consider. Warrior Priest, you gain a +1 bonus on initiative checks and a +2 bonus on concentration checks. I would say offhand that this isn't really worth it, to be honest with you. Wings. You gain a pair of wings that grant a +3 dodge bonus to AC against melee attacks and an immunity to ground-based effects such as difficult terrain. Boss level or higher level enemies have no problems using ground terrain effects against you. So this is actually a pretty nice defensive feat. Certainly not something that you want to put a priority on, but as an Aasimar, you've got access to it. You can make a decision if at some point you want to go ahead and pick this up. Accomplished sneak attacker. Do you have sneak attack? Are you doing sneak attack damage on a regular basis? If so, this makes sense. I think we already talked about agile maneuvers. If you are defensive and you want to be able to do more combat maneuvers, you should, if you're focused on dexterity and you want to do more combat maneuvers, you can go ahead and pick this up. We already talked about arcane armor training before. This just gives you a higher increase to the percentage that you will hopefully not fail for any spells that you cast. Boon Companion. All right. Okay, I'll try to explain this as simply as I can. If you're a druid and you take your animal companion, it's automatically going to be the same level as you and level up every time you level up. If you are a different class, sometimes, if you are a different class who takes an animal companion, sometimes that animal companion is not treated the same way a druid animal companion would be treated. Meaning that it is at a significantly lower level than you are. So you'll take it at level 5, right? And then that animal companion will be at level 1. as opposed to it automatically being leveled up to 5 so that it's neck and neck with you. All right. If you want to take it from level 1 to whatever level you're at so that it's treated like a druid animal companion, you need to take Boon Companion. Now, the thing is, I'm not sure if this is still a problem now, but in the beta, there will be a lot of times where Boon Companion would have a green thumbs up on it, even if your character did not actually need it. For example, Sela is a paladin. When she gets her animal companion at level 5, I believe, it is treated as a druid companion. So when you take it, it will automatically have 5 levels that you just burn through in order to bring it up to the same level she's at. Therefore, Sela does not need Boon Companion. But in all throughout the beta, there was a green thumbs up on Boon Companion for her to take it as if she needed it. So when you see Boon Companion, you need to check your animal companion and see what level is it at. If it's at the same level as you are, Boon Companion will do nothing for you. We already did clustered shots, I believe. Deadly aim. I think we might not have done this. You take a -1 penalty on all ranged attack rolls. 2 gain a +2 bonus on all ranged damage rolls. When your base attack bonus reaches +4, and every +4 thereafter, the penalty increases by 1, and the bonus to damage increases by 2. So as you get more powerful throughout the game, Deadly Aim gives you more damage. It's very, very great stuff for your archer. Keep in mind, last sentence says, the bonus damage does not apply to touch attacks or effects that do not deal hit point damage. So if you're using, even though, for example, a spellcaster with their ray spells, even though you need to take point blank shot and precise shot in order to take off that penalty for attack, a lot of these other ranger feats do not help you to be able to cast these spells effectively, because the type of attacks that they're doing, these feats won't apply. Alchemists also, they use touch attacks. They're going up against touch armor when you throw those bombs. Therefore, Deadly Aim does not help you. So make sure you're reading carefully, keeping this stuff in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're finally done. Okay. So that is the full list of feats in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Like I said before, I will leave a link down below for my video going through all the mythic feats, in case you're curious how the regular feats kind of interact with the mythic feats. I think you'll see that a little bit better looking through that video, but I was trying to keep this as quote unquote short as I possibly could. So I didn't want to go through all of the different mythic feats that really help you here, but hopefully this video provided you with a lot of information you weren't already aware of, and it helped clarify some things that you were curious about beforehand. If anything is unclear, if you need more help, post down below. This is a great community that we've been able to build up here. I answer most of my comments. A lot of Pathfinder vets in the subscribe to the channel, both those who play the game and those who play tabletop. They are always happy to throw it out there. I'm sure I got something wrong in this video, and they'll let me know down below what it is. So by all means, don't be shy. Go ahead, let us know you need help. We want as many people playing this game, enjoying this game, and feeling empowered in this game as possible. We're happy to help. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please leave me a like down below, share this video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.